Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Hi, I hope you're all doing well. So today I have prepared my commentary a little differently. Usually I have maybe just a topic that I want to talk about and I will spout extemporaneously. Other times I write out a statement and I will just read out loud. This time I decided to do something a little different. I've decided to stop taking notes digitally and take notes, paper, pen, ink, and all of that. And so what I've done is I've done some research and I want to talk to you about it. So here's the context, here's the background, here's the story. Earlier this morning, I was talking to you about the fact that I believe the President of the United States, Donald Trump, should be impeached. And someone had said to me, what crimes did he commit? And I listed those crimes. Among those crimes, treason, obstruction of justice, abuse of power, violation of the Emoluments Clause, all of these things. But also, here's a fact. The President of the United States does not have to commit a crime to be impeached. Now, someone told me that I was full of it and that I was lying and that I didn't know what I was talking about. And I said, go check out that Newsweek article. But I realized it would be better if I went and actually read through that article and picked it apart a little bit to show that this isn't just fanatical leftist anger. There's legitimacy. So what I'm going to talk to you about first, this is an article from Time magazine. This is not an article written by a liberal. Repeat, a Democrat, liberal, socialist, etc. did not write this. It was written by a libertarian who's the vice president of the Cato Institute. He got a bachelor's degree from Georgetown University, and he got his law degree from the University of Chicago, and he did a lot of research for this article. And I want to discuss it with you. Okay, so here's the first point, really important point that Mr. Gene Healy makes. He talks about the part of the Constitution that lists high crimes and misdemeanors as an impeachable offense. Okay, what's the meaning of high crimes and misdemeanors? He points out something very interesting here. This is what we call a term of art. What is a term of art? Yes, I had to look that up myself, to be honest with you. Okay, and I got this from Merriam-Webster Dictionary. A term of art, a term that has a specialized meaning in a particular field or profession. In other words, what that means is it's a word special to your profession. So lawyerese. Now, term of art is not to be confused with statute or law or anything like that. The term of art is just words that lawyers use with each other, or doctors use with each other, or actors use with each other, or wrestlers use with each other. That is a term of art, not the same thing as high crimes and misdemeanors. Okay, now we remember that the Constitution cited high crimes and misdemeanors as grounds for impeachment. Now, so I want to read this to you. High crimes and misdemeanors, a term of art in British impeachment proceedings for 4 centuries before the framers adopted it, was understood to reach a wide range of offenses that, whether or not criminal in nature, indicated behavior incompatible with the nature of the office. I think that's worth reading once again, so I'm going to do that. Okay, high crimes and misdemeanors, a term of art in British impeachment proceedings for 4 centuries before the framers adopted it and used it, was understood to reach a wide range of offenses that, whether or not criminal in nature, indicated behavior incompatible with the nature of the office. So, okay. So what does James Madison have to say about impeachment as researched by Mr. Healy? Okay, this is what James Madison has to say. Says, impeachment was the indispensable remedy for incapacity, negligence, or perfidy on the part of the president, categories of conduct dangerous to the president, only some of which also constitute crimes. So 2 reasons that James Madison said a president could be impeached that stand out to me in particular: incapacity and negligence. Keep in mind, whether or not you think President Trump's disavowing the unanimous decisions of the US intelligence community, maybe you don't think that's treason, but it's definitely negligence. Again, so according to James Madison, President Trump could be impeached. Pretty much a very easily deduced point here. But let's look at what other people had to say too. Let's talk about history and case law and precedent, and people involved in impeachments throughout history, United States history. But before we do that, I want to read you this one brief passage written by Mr. Healy because it's useful. The criminal law is designed to punish and deter, but those goals are secondary to impeachment, which aims at removing federal officers unfit for continued service, and where the criminal law deprives the convicted party of liberty, right? They could go to jail or be fined. The constitutional penalties for impeachable offenses shall not extend further than to removal from office as possible disqualification from future office holding. Okay, so this is important because what is this point making? It's saying in the criminal court of law, you get indicted, charged, you're found guilty or innocent, and then you're punished or you're not punished. However, if you're talking about judges, president, vice president, people appointed to office, etc., if their job performance is questionable to their colleagues can impeach them. That doesn't mean that their colleagues indict them literally and then find them guilty or innocent literally of a crime. So to put it another way, theoretically, President Trump could be impeached and then he could be indicted and charged, in theory. So again, the point is to understand that impeachment proceedings are profoundly different, distinctly different concept from a criminal court case. Okay. Now, we've got some history going back to Justice Joseph Story. I know we're going back centuries here. When did Justice Story serve? He served the Supreme Court from 1811 to 1845. And he has commented on impeachment. And this is what he said. The remedy of impeachment is not so much designed to punish an offender as to secure the state against gross official misdemeanors. It touches neither his person nor his property, but simply divests him of his political capacity. Okay, so what does that mean? It's basically corroborating what I said earlier, which was the distinction between a criminal proceeding and an impeachment proceeding. So we've got Justice Joseph Story, who served from 1811 to 1845 on public record describing impeachment as not a criminal issue, but as a professional issue. So to my critics who told me there was no basis on which my claim that you don't have to commit a crime to those who criticized me when I said you don't have to commit a crime to be impeached, who said that was baseless, that's just not true. Check the public record. Check this information I'm giving you. Again, if you're just joining me, I'll tell you the source. Again, the name of the article, "You Don't Have to Commit a Crime to Be Impeached," was written by a libertarian vice president of the Cato Institute, the libertarian think tank, Gene Healy. He's explaining, people on the record describing the difference between impeachment proceedings and criminal proceedings. Okay, I want to get a comment that Healy cited a professor of law at University of California, Berkeley, and also Harvard, Raoul Berger. And he gives an interesting analogy. His analogy is this: to impeach the president is like he's being deported. He's being deported out of the government. Again, animating the point that there is criminal issues and there's impeachment issues, two totally different subjects, obviously related, but again, you don't have to commit a crime. So more from Healy specifically. Had the framers restricted impeachment to statutory offenses, they'd have rendered the power a nullity from the start. In the early republic, there were very few federal crimes, and certainly not enough to cover the range of misdeeds that would rightly disqualify public officials from continued service. Okay, now about a court case, 1804, the impeachment of Judge Pickering. You may want to jot this one down, it's interesting. So Judge Pickering was impeached 1804. Why? Because he was a babbling alcoholic. That's it. Not to downplay that, but no crime there. The impeachment proceeding said that he was impeached because he had loose morals and intemperate habits. Reminds me of President Trump, actually. So, again, do not need to commit a crime to be impeached. Here's an interesting statistic. Sorry about that. So earlier today, I also gave you a statistic that two-thirds of impeachments were not criminal in nature. Again, that's in this article. That is a finding in this article. And bear with me for 12 seconds. Okay. Next, there's another example, another analogy we're given. This analogy comes from legal scholar Charles Black. Charles Black puts it this way. Suppose the president moved to Saudi Arabia and had 4 wives, as well as his own very own glowing orb. He couldn't be prosecuted for it. That is to say, it's not illegal. However, he would not be able to do the job if that's what he was going to be doing. And theoretically grounds for impeachment. And then removal. You know, the notion here is on fitness. On fitness. We've got another comment from James Madison, one of our founding fathers. The gentleman who wrote our Bill of Rights. James Madison suggested, this is again from the article, James Madison suggested at the Virginia Ratifying Convention, if the president be connected in any suspicious manner with any person, and there be grounds to believe he will shelter him, the House of Representatives can impeach him, and he can be removed if found guilty. Now, I did some further research. You can always go back to a source and then say, okay, well, that source got their information from another source. So I wanted to dig in and look at another source that Healy digged into. So this is a report that was issued to the United States Congress about impeachment in, I believe it was 2015. The name of the researcher, so we have the source, the name of the researcher is the Congressional Research Service. So it's a research organization that's literally tasked with just writing reports for the legislature. And who are the writers of this report? Legislative attorneys Jared P. Cole and Todd Garvey. So this is something that was presented to the Congress and explained to them about impeachment. So they address this issue. They ask the question, is impeachment limited to criminal acts? And they say, no. I'm going to quote a little bit here. Okay, they're talking again about the meaning of high crimes and misdemeanors, which is one of the standards you'd have to meet to be impeached. As they explain, the meaning of high crimes and misdemeanors is not defined in the Constitution or in statute and remains somewhat opaque. It was adopted from the English practice of parliamentary impeachments, which appears to have been directed against individuals accused of crimes against the state and encompassed offenses beyond traditional criminal law. Emphasis here, offenses beyond traditional criminal law. And by the way, where are Cole and Garvey getting their sources from? I mean, you could see all the footnotes here. Can you see it? They're looking at the impeachment case of Judge Alcee L. Hastings. So the point is, like, this isn't really opinion. This is legal history. There is a history of people being impeached, but not having committed actual crimes, statutory crimes. Okay, further, the notion that only criminal conduct can constitute sufficient grounds for impeachment does not comport with historical practice, like we were saying. Alexander Hamilton. So we quoted earlier James Madison, the fellow who wrote our Bill of Rights. He explained grounds for impeachment going beyond criminal law. Now we've got Alexander Hamilton here. Alexander Hamilton, in justifying placement of the power to try impeachments in the Senate, described impeachable offenses as arising from the misconduct of public men, or in other words, from the abuse or violation of some public trust. That's worth repeating. And the public trust concept is, to quote Donald Trump, huge, because what is he doing to the public trust when he's constantly attempting to delegitimize any media outlet that is even slightly critical of him? Right, so the abuse or violation of some public trust. Such offenses were, according to Hamilton, political, as they relate chiefly to injuries done immediately to the society itself. Let that resonate. Let that sink in. Let that sink in. Impeachable offenses, according to Alexander Hamilton, were political, as they relate chiefly to injuries done immediately to the society. Is it an injury to society when every media outlet is called fake by the highest office holder in the country? What about when the President of the United States demeans publicly the entire US intelligence community and defers to an autocratic president of a country that is our enemy, that we're actively in a state of war with? Yes, that is an injury done immediately to the society. Other high crimes and misdemeanors are not limited to indictable offenses, but apply to serious violations of the public trust. That concept is pretty important, you see. And that citation there, serious violations of the public trust, was cited in the impeachment of Walter L. Nixon. Not to be confused with President Nixon, who would have been impeached. And later the two legislative attorneys write this. High crimes and misdemeanors are thus best characterized as misconduct that damages the state and the operations of government institutions. Again, I would just look at how stemming all the way back to Vladimir Putin, right? The desire to disrupt the functioning of our government, to make it unstable, to sow discord within the society. And the president is feeding into that. He's perpetuating that. That in itself, right? Forget his attack at the First Amendment. Forget his violation of the Emoluments Clause. Forget the treason. Forget the obstruction of justice. Forget the abuse of power. That the president is participating in rhetoric and activities that destabilize our government. Impeachable. Whether viewed as a crime, a statutory crime, or not. Again, I want to reiterate that statistic that I mentioned earlier. So when I find a statistic, I like to see if other sources corroborate it. So this report also corroborates the claim that 2/3 of impeachment proceedings that ended in removal were criminal in nature. Right? This report finds that less than 1/3 of impeachment proceedings have specifically invoked a criminal statute or used the term crime. So look, if anybody is going to argue to you, what crimes did the president commit? You can list abuse of power, obstruction of justice, violation of the Emoluments Clause, all these. I have a comment, and I do want to take a moment to answer it because David McDermott, who has been a loyal, longtime supporter of my various attempts at meaningful self-expression, he's been supporting that for, I think, about a decade now, almost. David says, now Nixon was clandestine. Trump is done public view, so people don't view it as a crime. Yeah, David, this is a very valid point. As you say, done in public view, I would, to put that another way, you have lawyers, prosecutors like Jill Wine-Banks speaking on MSNBC. She was a prosecutor, a Watergate prosecutor. She said, in plain sight, abuse of power, obstruction of justice. Yes, that's what we're witnessing. So I don't know, does anyone else have any comments, questions, concerns, critiques, thoughts, etc.? I'm certainly glad to hear them. But in terms of any claim whatsoever that the president has to commit a crime to be impeached, while you might argue that that should be the case, you may argue it, it's not the case. It's not the case. It's not the case. And I suppose I will leave it at that for now. If you've enjoyed my analysis and opinion provided today, I hope that you would be so kind as to share this little video with your friends, family, coworkers, etc. Also, I encourage you to visit my blog, publiccomment.blog, where I have an archive of my videos, live streams, and also articles, analyses, and opinion pieces, and the random digression. Other things you can even see on the blog include papers that were initially academic. I write about the history, I write about Andrew Jackson and some of the wild and crazy things under his administration. I trace the evolution of Romanticism as an aesthetic philosophical concept and how that leaked into thinking that eventually polluted Hitler's mind and led to the Holocaust. So a wide variety of content on publiccomment.blog, which I hope you will take a look at. I would absolutely love it if you would be so kind as to give me your thoughts on the content there. And also feel free to share that with your friends. Finally, if you know anyone who is looking for a political commentator to serve on their platform, do consider me and let them know there's a young fellow named Sean O'Connor out there who is doing the best he can to provide objective analysis and also argue objectively evidenced opinions. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, and have a fantastic day.